Hello and welcome to Guy Logic. My name is Timko and today we are taking a look at Hitman, the new reboot of a title we have known since the days of the PS2, brought to you by IO Interactive and published by Square Enix. And if you've not heard of Hitman, well, the short and long of it is a stealth action game where you play as Agent 47, a assassin that goes out and takes out targets in a myriad of ways, ranging from straight up shooting them, to drowning them, to poisoning them, to having chandeliers fall on them. This game is being released in a sort of episodic way, and we'll get into that in a little bit and our opinions on that, because oh boy, we have opinions on that. Or you can buy the game full price right now and then experience the game over the rest of the year until it arrives early 2017 in its full and fleshed out form. So you have two ways to purchase the game, either now for like 13 euros or $15, or you can buy the full experience for the usual $60 retail price. I'm going to explain how the story goes and what the game does and whether or not it's worth your time and effort to play it. But first, we are going to take a look at the options menu and run a little bit of a benchmark test to see how performance is and isn't, because the game does have a built-in benchmarking tool, so that is pretty good. So if you do not want to hear me talk about options and want to go straight to the gameplay, then press the annotation that has appeared somewhere on screen right about now and we'll get you straight on there. For the rest of us, let's go ahead and see into some options. Settings wise, the options menu is pretty extensive. You have some gameplay settings, and these are mostly there to make your life more difficult. You can turn off highlights, NPC icons, attention alerts, all these things that either make or break your gameplay experience. So if you want a more truer stealth and a lot harder experience, you can turn off all of these, from objectives not being visible always, vital information, mini maps, name it, you can turn all of it off and give yourself quite a bit more of a stealth experience. I've turned all of them on because I am a wussy, but you can turn them off, so I really applaud the game developers for including this instead of just a simple toggle for difficult. This extensive toggle is pretty good. So from there we go to mouse and keyboard. You have full key bindings with main and secondary keys. You can bind them to keyboard, you can bind them to mouse. This is all pretty good, nothing really missing there. Mouse sensitivity, inverting y-axis, pretty good. Graphics wise, it is also pretty complete. There are a couple of weird things though here. And the main thing I've noticed is that texture quality cannot go too high. I can change it in any way, so that is the max limit. And if I had to shadow resolution, it goes to high, but shadow mapping goes to ultra. Super sampling I can change, but it's grayed out, so that's weird. But the game does have full screen windowed and full screen windowed, as you'd expect from a AAA title. It does allow quite a bit of texture filtering, and SSAO, shadow maps, etc. I've turned a few of these options on or off, and I'll show you what is going on in regards to the benchmark in a bit. But there are some weird things going on with performance in this game that I just can't explain yet. So we'll go through them and I'll show you what is going on. Audio wise, you have the options you expect to have. The one thing I'm missing is dialogue options for the various voice chats, or at least the various voice acting. But we can do without. It's just really weird that it's not included when the other two effects and music are. Languages, text languages, there's quite a few. Subtitle wise, so this is really impressive they have these languages. You can turn on and off subtitles. There is a few bugs where subtitles do not show up properly, so keep that in mind. You have a semlink, which well, I don't like this sort of thing because the game is always online. This pisses me off. Credits and quit the game. So the game requires you to be always online, and that is a definite mark against the title. I do not understand why. It's a single player title, and yes, there are some online components, but having you go online just for those components would be fine. But having you forced always on and disconnecting your PlayStation if you lose, something we know is going to have issues on release day, where 1 million plus people try to log in and the servers just implode on them. It happens every single time, and it's a mess every single bloody time. So developers quit doing that. It's DRM of the most intrusive and anti-consumer kind. Quit it. So that is definitely something you have to keep in mind if you want to buy this game. It has always on functionality, which it does not need because it is a single player game for the vast majority of things. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and skip into a benchmark now and talk a bit about PC performance. And then we'll explain some of the other UI elements and the things you can do in the game. So let's go ahead and skip ahead to the benchmark and we'll see what is going on there. As you can see, performance is fiddly. The game will run anywhere between 30 and 100 FPS, and I cannot seem to figure out why that is. I have tried everything from low settings, it will still dip below 60. I've tried it on max settings, where it will dip to 40, but only in very specific situations. These situations are usually when there is reflective surfaces on screen, so you have a lot of windows and mirrors. That seems to tank the FPS. But it doesn't tank with a lot of NPCs, a lot of AI, a lot of rendering on screen. FPS is stable at 60 for the vast majority of the situations, even on max settings. And yes, I do not have the newest and latest of graphics card. A GTX 780 still perform pretty well even on not maxed out settings. But it doesn't, and the game dips below 60 repeatedly. Now you can granted lock the game at 30, but we're on PC, we do not want that. And VSync does help some. And you can tweak options left and right if you want. There is definitely some options here and there. Now, this is a benchmark of the Paris mission, one of the first missions available in the game. And in the game, when you're walking around, I kept my FPS meter turned on at all times. And the dips are notable, but they are not breaking. The main thing I noticed the dips on is when you are either looking at a reflective surface, so that is definitely mirrors, walls, with windows in them, screens, things like that, then the game dips below 60. But it's really inconsistent when it does that. So I'm not sure what is going on there, but yeah, that is definitely a weird situation. In regards to the settings I have used in any way, it dipped below 60 regardless. I have it on HD rendering, I have tried DirectX 11, I have tried DirectX 12, I have tried full screen windowed, I have tried using a high level of detail, a medium level of detail, SMAA, FXAA as anti-aliasing, texture quality from low to medium. Obviously, we don't have even high texture quality, so I'm not sure what that would entail. Texture filtering from trilinear to anisotrophic, all the way up to anisotrophic 16 I've tried. The biggest difference it just isn't there. It's all 10-15 FPS difference max on the lowest end to the highest end, and it just consistently dips between that range regardless of settings. So it's definitely something with the game. I'm hoping it's isolated to my system, but time will tell. So be careful if you have a lower end system. The game does not run as smooth as it could, should, or we would like it to. Okay, so now let's go ahead and dive into some gameplay and explain what kind of options you have. We're gonna show you a bit of a pre-recorded setup of the Paris mission, and we'll see and go from there in regards to some of the other options you have available in the game to extend the gameplay beyond just that mission. Let's get into it, shall we? Okay, back into the main menu, we can press either destinations, which decides where we can go. You have to unlock these, and these are going to be the various missions that are available for you down the line when they unlock later in the year. Story-wise, you select either a cinematic, a tutorial, the training mission, and so on and so forth, and as well as the showstopper, which is the first mission called Paris. We're going to show you this one, but first, I want to show you contracts. And contracts are their way to extend gameplay, which is something that's pretty interesting. For example, you can play the game, create a contract while playing the game. So you could do the first mission and designate a different character as a target, and then go from there and release the various contracts online for people to play. This is definitely going to extend the gameplay a little bit, but it's sort of fiddly. I'll get into that again in a little bit. What I will show you right now is the Paris mission. Now, I've finished this mission 3 times so far. And each mission starts with a briefing, the challenges, and the leaderboards. Leaderboards, it's pretty empty at this point because there is mostly reviewers and PC critics on here right now. Challenges are pretty interesting. Assassination-wise, it says there's a couple of assassination challenges. So, Silent Assassin tells me to finish the showstopper mission killing only the targets, hiding all the bodies, and not getting spotted. And then you have the showstopper. That you have to kill Viktor Novikov with a light rig, etc. So these are basically achievements, right? And there is quite a bunch of them, and these are all for a variety of missions, and these are all those for the Paris mission. Then you have Discovery, which is things you can find in the game. Feats, which are amazing things you can do. Saying someone in an accident, stage an accident, and complete the following assassination challenges. Assassinate a target with a headshot. And these are all there as well. And then you have targets, which is the main focus of the game. Okay. You can do these repeatedly, and this will unlock a variety of things for you in the game. What will it unlock? Well, let's get into planning. And you will see a couple of things. One, it tells me what I can do to customize my experience for this run. So you can customize a little bit of what you want to do in the game. For example, I have the tuxedo or his signature suit available for me here. I can select either a small firearm or a silenced firearm. I can select fiber wire or a coin or a proximity mine, a syringe, a lockpick. I can do 2 of these. And I can also smuggle in an item. And you can smuggle in items at a variety of locations. And this requires you to unlock challenges to unlock these locations, making it possible for you to do a mission several times, unlock a challenge, and then redo that mission again, but with the goal to approach it in a different perspective or smuggle in things from a different location. And we're going to add the syringe here because that is pretty useful. The same thing goes for starting locations. You have various starting locations. You only have the main entrance at first, but unlocking more of these is going to unlock a larger variety of locations you can start in, as well as the way you start them in. So you can go undercover at the auction, you can go undercover in the audiovisual center, pile driver barge, you can go in on a barge outside. So there is a variety of ways to approach this mission once you have unlocked those options, and this will make it possible for you to do a variety of challenges. But enough of that. We're going to go ahead into gameplay. It's going to load in. And as soon as this is loaded in, the game will start and take over. And this is the pre-recorded bit we're skipping in right now. So be ready for a little bit of stuttering. Keep in mind, the game's performance is very wonky and very fiddly, so dips below 60 are expected and not unusual. I haven't been able to fix it in any way or form. I've looked at reviews from other people, and they have basically either said the same thing, or they have looked at it from a console, where I've even heard things like them dipping below 30 FPS on the PS4. So I can't confirm that, but the performance is dreadful in my opinion. But you can see that for yourself in a little bit. Okay, gameplay. Let's get into this, shall we? All missions start with a cutscene. We're gonna skip all of those to minimize spoilers. I cannot promise there will not be some minor either gameplay or story spoilers, but I will try to minimize them as best I can. And one of the first things you'll notice is that the game sounds, looks, feels gorgeous, full, and alive. The big main entry hall is filled with people, and they're all having their own actions. Some are a little less interesting than others, as they'll be mostly standing still in clumps, but quite a few others have patrol routes, have interactions they do, have locations they visit, have things they do overall, and have AI interactions that are consistent, but still require you to observe the gameplay and see what is going on. Hitman has always been praised for its very wide variety of ways to approach a mission. Each mission is, technically you could call it open world, but the world is not open, so you could call it open leveled. You are thrown into a level, you get a couple of objectives, and the game world leaves you to it in how you plan on filling those in. It doesn't force you to take a very particular path in most situations. Now, something the previous Hitman game, Absolution, did was put a much heavier action spin on the game. You would be more often forced to fight, to kill, to use gunplay to get out of a situation. In fact, it was often the preferred route. If you were getting a bit annoyed, you could just run in, gun everyone down, hide their bodies, and continue 2 rooms later on as if nothing had changed. This new Hitman game really does away with that in a very big way. Combat doesn't feel great, the gunplay doesn't feel great, but it shouldn't feel great. This is mostly about takedowns, this is mostly about planning, about observation, about figuring out your target, its mannerisms, figuring out different ways to approach that, and definitely not about run and gun and shooting down everything. You can still do that, but it is far from satisfying and most definitively not the way to play the game, in my opinion. Every mission has a variety of ways you can do it. What Hitman in this game does is gives you the option to follow these story hints. These are a variety of ways you can do the mission that the game provides you if you're unsure what is going on. Now you can turn these off and be thrown into the blind like I said earlier. I haven't turned them off because again I am a wussy, and the game will tell you to get a disguise or get a card, a remote control, a phone or something like that. And every mission I've seen so far, and keep in mind there's only the first tutorial missions as well as the Spares mission, has quite a few things here. I'm not sure how future missions are going to be, so for all intents and purposes, consider this a review of the first episode. But interactive objects ranging from propane tanks, wrenches, hammers, fire extinguishers, mallets, all the way to screwdrivers, lighters, and so on. There is quite a few things you can use and interact to distract targets, to subdue targets, to kill other things, to make people move away from an area, to make people move into an area. You have quite a few tools at your disposal. And one of the amazing things about this Hitman title is that it allows you to use them in a consistent fashion. You will always be able to use a fire alarm, and NPCs will behave consistently throughout every use. It's not going to be that one NPC is going to ignore you while another chases you and a third runs into a different direction. They're not going to act frightened when you pull the fire alarm. They're going to act frightened if you pull out a gun. If you shoot someone, they will cover in fear. They'll point, they'll look, and they'll find you. So it's pretty important. Make sure that the things you're doing have consistent effects. Now always, you will mess up. You will probably die. I know I did repeatedly. You will probably figure something out and then have to retrace your steps to redo it. Sometimes you may have triggered an action too early or too late, and you would have to redo the whole level for that. Thankfully, there is both manual saves, which you can do at any given time, as well as autosaves on important spots in the story. These are often when you complete an objective, when you reach a certain threshold, when you activate a part of an optional side area, you complete the challenge. These are places and times when the game autosaves. One of the defining characteristics of the Hitman titles is the ability to take disguises and infiltrate an organization step by step and tire by tire. Originally, Hitman games did this hit and miss. This game does an okay job of it, but some of them are pretty contrived. There is no real reason outside of a balancing standpoint that, for example, certain guards will recognize you but other guards won't when you are dressed as a guard. Either they should all recognize you in a certain time, or none of them should, unless you're doing something obviously suspicious. But there is, for no apparent reason, some guards have been singled out to recognize that you are an imposter, while other guards do not do so. It's also pretty important to note that while there is a variety of things you can do, they have tried to make certain characters advance you and certain characters hold you back a little bit. If you're a cook or a waiter, you're not allowed in the higher floors with security clearance. If you're a guard, you are, but then you're not allowed in private areas. But if you're a special guard, the non-special guards won't let you into the normal areas, so you have to mix and match a little bit. But there is no real consistency in when and how they will let you enter a certain area. If you get around a certain guard and there's 20 other guards inside that don't have the white bubble above their heads, they will not just you in and ignore you otherwise, even though they're all in the same area you shouldn't be allowed to enter. So that is a little bit weird. I understand it from a balancing and gameplay standpoint, but it still feels a little bit off. A little bit more consistency would have been nice. Obviously, this is the only mission I've been able to test, and my experience so far is very positive. The gameplay loop is definitely Hitman-esque. It is better than Absolution was. It comes more to what I've come to love from Hitman Blood Money. It does a great job at that. The interactions feel great. all the actions you do feel interesting. You have a variety of ways of doing things, always. Cleaning bodies, removing targets. Everything has options and pathways you can take. You are never locked into a certain specific way of doing things. But this is one mission out of quite a few coming out over the rest of the year. I can't tell you how the other missions are going to be. I can't tell you whether or not this game will actually get finished. It's a real risk with episodic titles never getting finished. It's also a real risk that future episodes are going to be many times weaker in quality. But it's also a fact that the direct result of this episode being pushed forward when the game is clearly not ready is that there is quite a few bugs outside of the performance issues. Interactive objects that don't want to trigger, audio that cuts out, subtitles that are missing in certain situations, AI that sometimes fizzles out. These are all clear symptoms of a game not finished, which would have been fine if it was a fuller release and they delay it and they fix these bugs in the entire system. But now they're trying to fix bugs in a single episode while they're also trying to push out content for the next episode already, and that is clearly shining through as a just can't. The game needs more time in the oven from a tactical standpoint, so that is a real shame. And I really wish Square Enix would have just delayed the game further, like August, September or October, and released a full title that was properly optimized and properly bug fixed. But they decided this last minute episodic route. The game was not designed for it. It was cut with a mallet in very specific situations, and this first mission feels like an isolated mission. Oh, it's an episode, it's an isolated mission, but it really isn't, because all the missions are follow-ups one of the other. It's clearly a consistent, coherent story, and they're basically decide to go into it with a mallet and break it off where they need to, or where they can, to reach production deadlines. And that, I think, is going to really detract from the experience of the story, the experience of the game and the title when you play for 5 or 6 hours and then leave the game alone for a month or 2 months before picking it up again. I don't think it's going to do the game good. I'm sure it's going to do the community good with the contracts. Overall, I just feel it's a very, very weird and bad decision, mostly powered by money and greed, not for a love of the franchise or the title. So that is a real shame, and I'm really sad that the developer and publisher have decided to do this. I'm going to assume it's the publisher and not the developer. Developers generally have the best intentions when developing a game, barring a few exceptions. But yeah, the publisher definitely screwed the pooch on this one in regards to upholding the game. Now, as I said earlier, a variety of ways to do things does not mean you are forced or rushed into doing things. But it doesn't mean that the game has an infinite loop. Things don't repeat per se. Sometimes characters will go in and out of an area, and you will be forced to either load an earlier save or figure out a different way to do this, because maybe you've poisoned a glass of champagne or wine, and the character just never goes back into that room, or a different NPC drinks it, which is also something I've had happen to me, where I poisoned a glass of wine, thinking the NPC I was trying to kill was going to drink it, but instead his assistant or member or whatever drank it, got killed, and then I got found out because obviously the security went out and about and found me. Pretty cool. Now, there is a few more systems in place in Hitman that do the game, I don't feel they do a disservice, but they lower the difficulty to such an extent that keeping them on might actually make you enjoy the game less. Now, the main two things I'm talking about right then are Instinct, which you see me use in the video continually, which highlights objects and can see through walls to see enemies, as well as Tips. Having basically a tutorial in a mission telling you to do A, do B, do C. You can see it in the video. It tells me to go to the garden. It tells me to kill this superstar. It tells me to take his disguise. It tells me to go up and meet with Marley. It just tells you basically what to do to guarantee a successful mission. And one of the main defining strengths of Hitman was always figuring these things out. And right now you don't. And it does definitely detract from my enjoyment of the game. I've turned this on obviously for the video, but I do not plan on using it again during my gameplay sessions for this game, because it has really made the game a lot simpler, where I just run around and pick up these guides, basically, instead of trying to figure out the best way to get to my target and trying to figure out if there's other ways to reach my objective. The second one is Instinct, as I said. Instinct highlights objects you can use and also allows you to see through walls and find your target and also find other enemies and NPCs and so on. In Absolution, Instinct was a consumable resource more or less. It recharged and you could get a bit more of it if you did certain things. But if you ran out, and that was it. Here, it's either on or off, and it doesn't recharge because you can always use it. I like this system in Absolution better for this because it allows you to fine-tune the difficulty. You could always keep it on, you could only have it for a limited amount of time, or you could turn it off completely. Here you only have the choice of always or not at all. Not at all is kind of annoying because I'm not as good at stealth games as I want to be, and that detracts my enjoyment again because I can't figure it out, I get frustrated and quit playing. But if I turn it on, it makes me feel as if the game is hand-holding me too much, telling me what I can do or where I should be going effectively. So that is also detracting from my enjoyment. I'm not sure if there is a middle way. I hope they fix in a third or fourth option for this feature where they say, well, on, off, on, but you can only use it for like a minute during a mission, or on, you can use it for 5 minutes during a mission. There is a variety of ways they could fix that. I hope they do. But the main thing that happens though is that once you figure out how to use this ability, you will initially, at least I did, go through a variety of rooms, picking up all the objects that look interesting, everything from keys to poison to screwdrivers, wrenches, hammers, car keys, whatever, name it. You're not even sure if you're going to use it or if it might come in handy, but you're just picking it up because you're there and it's glowing and you might as well. Which sort of gives it a weird little vibe, as if it was a point and click or secret object game and not a Hitman stealth assassination title. Well, a bit of a disconnect there. Okay, obviously these are nitpicking points in regards to the gameplay. The gameplay is bloody fantastic. It is phenomenal, and I've said that before and I'll say it again. It feels like Hitman, it looks like Hitman, it plays like Hitman, and it acts like Hitman. I have to be careful, I have to be meticulous, I have to look at a problem from a variety of angles. I have to probably figure out what I can do, not only do it. And it allows you a variety of ways of moving a target, distracting a target. It's Hitman and it's really good. What really though brings the game to life is not only what you can do, but how the game reacts to you doing things. And I think this is a very important distinction to make between Hitman and something like Alekine's Gun, or Alekine's Gun I should say. Alekine's Gun had the variety of options down to a T as well. You could do things in very many ways. There was not a limitation placed on you to do certain things in a certain way a lot. But what Alekine's Gun didn't have was a vibrant world. Alekine's Gun, the guards, if I killed someone and they walked by and didn't notice their friend in the same post or position, wouldn't react. In Hitman, they'll react. If you walk by someone and you're a guard outfit, you'll get greeted. If you walk by people and you bump into them, they'll notice and they'll remember. I bumped into someone coming into the Paris mission the first time, and about 20 minutes later, I bumped into them again, and the dialogue changed. Instead of saying, hey, be careful, they said, you again, you really need to learn where to move, where to walk. Which, it was really good. That really was enjoyable because it felt like the game world remembered me. I was moving through it, I was being invisible, but people noticed. And the NPCs saw me, and they remembered. And that's really cool. Now, there are some things that I do not like about Hitman, even though I'm praising it to high heaven in terms of gameplay, in terms of sound design, in terms of aesthetic. As I said before, the PC performance is an absolute joke. It is not rendering at 60 FPS. On a GTX 780, I can't get it on a stable 60 FPS regardless of what I do. I could put it on the lowest settings available in the game and it still did not run at 60 FPS. I've heard of course it's not running on a PS4 at 30 FPS. That is not okay. So I would actually understand it if you decide not to buy the game based on the absolutely poor performance, because it is poor. And the game is made with AMD instead of Nvidia, which is something I don't see often. I do encourage because competition is good. So maybe they'll be day one drivers and Nvidia will probably have their drivers a couple of days later to optimize for Hitman, and maybe that will help. But I don't see the performance being such a weird thing because of Nvidia or AMD. The game just feels technically buggy overall. There's these little things that are just evident and annoying. Okay, what else do I not like? Well, I mentioned the gunplay, that it feels weak and soft, and I'll reiterate that the same goes for the melee combat, and the same goes for most of the escape maneuvers and things you can do in regards to that sort of thing. Controls are fine, and the game behaves fine, and you can act fine, but something like, for example, throwing a coin requires 2 button clicks to distract a guard. Using a gun requires aiming with the right mouse button, shooting with the left mouse button. The guns don't feel great. They feel pretty terrible. And while that is the strong point of Hitman, it is still very, very weak. So that's a definite shame. Now, one more thing that is also a shame, I feel, is the way they've handled the episodic release coupled with the challenges and content available. One of the things I noticed when I was playing is that when I would finish a level, I would do 4, 5, 6 challenges in one go because I'd find the rat poison and that would trigger a achievement. I'd find a disguise of someone. I'd figure out a specific route to get to someone. I would kill him in a specific manner outside of like just shooting him. I would hide their body in a specific place. And I would get like 4, 5, 6 achievements in the first run. The second time I would get 3 or 4 because I would look them up. And then I'd have done the mission twice. I'd have figured out the vast majority of things. And you would have seen a pattern of things that were put in place not because they're fun or interesting, but because they're padding to make you play the game longer until the next episode comes out. I feel the contract builder is mostly this. This is my final gripe with the game, and outside of that, I love it to bits, but this is my final gripe, and it's also a pretty big one. The contract builder puts you in the gameplay and tells you go play the game, and based on certain options and settings, you can decide what target you want to take out. So the first tutorial mission is you trying to infiltrate a boat, and there's 2 NPCs that you can target on the boat. Once you do the contract mode, it tells you go up to this NPC, target him, okay, detarget him, go up on the boat, find the target you want to make this a contract for, and find out the ways you want to do it, the kill with. So it says like kill the captain and do it with a barrel from on top of the roof that's tied up there, and you have to untie it. Cool, fine. But to do that, you have to actually do the mission that way as if you were playing it. The problem is, I don't want to make missions where I first have to complete them in that fashion, no matter how sloppy I am at this game, and then release it into the wild for someone that is a million times better than me to do it in a few seconds, school me on how to do it properly, and get bored. I want the guys and girls that can figure out these amazing missions but perhaps not execute them, which is a very common thing. They can figure out a layered mission. They can figure out these complex contracts that will have people busting their heads over to solve them. I want that sort of thing. But I can't make that because I'm the one playing the game while making that contract, and that's only detracting from my enjoyment doing the contract. And I know my contract could be better if I could have a god mode or a admin mode where I could ignore the NPCs, I could ignore the guards, I could set up the contract and then release it into the wild with a specific set of parameters. I can't. I'm forced to play through the game's contract, and if I fail, I have to redo it and reset up the contract and so on and so forth. It is really fiddly and annoying. And I have no idea why they made a conscious decision to do it this way, but it really detracts from, in me anyway, from going into contracts or making them in any fashion or manner. To sum it all up, from top to bottom, sound amazing. World and environment, bloody awesome. Mission, variety, open world of these missions, gorgeous, open, solid, looks alive, feels alive, and gives you a ton of options to perform your actions. Achievements, help, tooltips, and a way to make yourself more or less difficult in regards to gameplay. All of this is available. All of it is there. It is all really, really fleshed out and really good. These are the good parts. Bad parts, gunplay is subpar and boring, and the PC performance is abysmal. It is. I really hope they fix it. I really hope Day One drivers are going to solve it. But at the moment, it is abysmally bad. The game requires always on DRM, which is a mark against it, but this is something publishers have been doing for quite a bit. I mean, The Division is obviously an online-only game, but we've had even Blizzard doing it with Diablo way back when. So this is not a new thing, but it does not make it okay. it is still pretty anti-consumer. And the game's episodic way is pretty clear. The game is not built for it, the game is not designed for it, and they've gone at it with a mallet and cut the game in pieces where it shouldn't have been cut for story, progression, and cohesion. And because the various episodes are months and weeks apart, it will probably result in you not having as much enjoyment in the game because you can't play it in a single stretch or over a period of time that is tied together. No, you can only pick it up sporadically and have to reinvest and relearn most of the game every couple of months. You probably won't, so there is that. So Hitman is out on March 11th over on Steam. You can buy the first episode of the game for $13, or you can buy the full game for $60, and then you will get each episode for free. Otherwise, you can buy each additional episode for $10. And the final episode is scheduled to come out somewhere at the end of the year or the beginning of 2017. So it'll be a while before the game is complete. What we don't know, obviously, is there going to be support after that? Because that would be really weird for an episodic version of the game. But it's not something weird you expect from a AAA, is it? You pay $60 for a full game, you're paying $60 for a full game, but now you're paying $60 and getting tidbits of the game over a year. Really weird. So I'm not sure they'll have DLC plans, in-game cash out plans, and so on and so forth. I don't know. They probably will, but there is going to be that. Okay, that is Hitman. I hope you enjoyed. I have been enjoying my time with Hitman, playing the game a great deal. I'm just not sure on the business model, release schedule, or PC performance. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, press that like button below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that reason. And leave a comment. Tell us what we can do better. Tell us what you liked. And tell us what you want to see more of. And if you want to see more content on the channel like this, or other critical content, just press that subscribe button and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on Guy Logic.